joining us right now, a guy who did a tremendous job covering all the drama last year, does a tremendous job covering the Eagles all the time for ESPN.com and 97.5 Fanatic, Mr. Tim McManus on the Comcast Business Hotline. How you doing today, Tim?
Doing very well, Ty. How about you?
Doing pretty well, man. I want to ask you about this because what we've been, now that we're got some distance after the Steelers game, last season when there started to be a little bit of drama, boy, things got bad. I remember you writing about how miserable they were at 10-1. Fast forward to this year, there's been too little times where drama flares up after the bye week and then obviously after the Carolina game. What does the Eagles' performance against the Steelers tell you about the Eagles' growth in that particular area?
It tells you that they're built different from a year ago. It was almost like last year they were waiting for adversity to hit, to cave almost. There was some things bubbling under the surface of players who were not happy with whether it was what was happening with the coaching, or the direction or whatever it was. And as soon as like a loss hit, they were ready to, start complaining about it and things going downhill. This is a different situation. This team is giving off a whole lot different vibes, Ty, where they're obviously locked in and hungry. And yes, there have been moments like the, Sirianni yelling at fans and they're 2-2. That was definitely a point of adversity. There was this past week of the drama and the questions about the quarterback and the star wide receiver and what Brandon Graham had to say in the passing game and, what was going to fall from that. But the mindset just seems to be a whole lot different, and all of this stuff is geared towards ensuring that they're putting the very best product out on the field. It feels like light years away from the mentality that they had this time last season.
Do you feel like there's more like an open forum or just open minds within the locker room than there was last year?
Yeah, I think that there has been growth in that respect. A lot of the same key members are here, but I think that there's just more of like last year was a different beast, right? They're coming off of the Super Bowl. They ended up hiring a defensive coordinator who wasn't their first choice. It was Vic Fangio. Once Jonathan Gannon late in the process told them that he was bouncing. I don't know that there was a whole lot of buy-in on either of the defensive coordinators that were here last year. As I had reported out with Jeremy Fowler, there was tension, creative tension, or just tension in general between Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. Both of those guys got out of character a little bit. This is all coming off the heels of a near Super Bowl championship that put an immense amount of pressure on these guys. And so things just didn't coalesce last year, and there's people pulling in different directions is probably the main point. So that doesn't mean that things don't come up this year that have to get dealt with. Like, if A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are frustrated with the state of the passing game, as they said, they had to have some hard conversations about that. But it's not like pulling in different directions totally where things start to split at the seams. They might have disagreements, but it's all towards the same goal, if that makes sense. So that's really the big difference for me.
Tim, let's talk about the passing game a little bit. If you look at some of the stats, obviously there have been a couple bad games, not to deny that. But in the macro sense, it seemed like they've been very efficient passing the ball, but the quantity hadn't been there. And you mentioned on air with us multiple times that sooner or later a team was going to force them to pass. The Steelers decided to really sell out to stop the run. Is that part of the reason why you think Jalen Hurts responded so well is because of the way the Steelers sold out, or does more of that credit go to him for just stepping up and playing well?
Yeah, I think it's both. I mean, the fact that the Steelers sold out to go against the run and Saquon Barkley, they really telegraphed that that's what they were going to do, and they did it. And they were playing in the single high, and they were playing man-to-man coverage. And this is not a team that you want to play a lot of heavy man-to-man coverage against, mainly because of A.J. Brown. Like, he's going to rip you up, man. And he did. And so I think the picture was pretty clear. Like, one thing that's been happening early in games for the Eagles, a lot of players have told me this, is that defenses have been throwing just weird stuff at them that isn't anywhere on their tape. And their thinking is because, we have a very talented group, like they're just going to throw the kitchen sink, something that we've never seen before to mess us up, which is part of the reason why they're getting off the slow start. That's not an excuse, but that's like, they have to troubleshoot in real time. Like, what is this that they're using? Whereas I think Pittsburgh just kind of lined up and did what they did, and they were expecting it, and they executed it, and they played the type of defense, man coverage, that this Eagles passing game can really thrive against. So all of those things sort of added up. But you also have to give credit to Hurts. He had been slow to release the ball relative to the rest of the league if you look at his time before release. And that dropped by about a second in this game. And so, he was dropping back, boom, boom. You know what it was like, Ty? It was like in all these conversations that I have with you guys during training camp of like, the ball is out. Like quick games, like boom, 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 pop. It's the slam, right. The slams, like across, and then that stuff sort of disappeared, and really came back in and we've seen bits and pieces of it, but really came back in a full force in that Pittsburgh game.
The one thing that I watch all season long, this defense gets better and better, and I look at this Steelers game with the 2 turnovers early, and the Eagles defense kind of stood on their heads and said, you know what, not today. I feel like, they're almost put on the back burner at times, but this defense has been something special, and it looks as though they're the best in the National Football League.
I mean, it's the surprise of the season for sure. And there's not a soul that was forecasting that they would be as good as they are. So much credit goes to Vic Fangio for just the way that he has come in here and got the buy-in, and also just he pushes the right buttons. He's quick to adjust. He makes sure that an offense does not stay comfortable. And then Howie Roseman, I was thinking about this today. Like, this feels very much like 2017 from a personnel standpoint, in that year, Roseman just knocked it out of the park. It was like every signing that could have gone right went right for him in the offseason, whether you're talking about Chris Long or whether it was Jay Ajayi during the trade deadline. Like, every single piece just really worked. And, of course, there's the Bryce Huff one that didn't this year, but think about every other one. And on the defensive side of the ball, like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, maybe he's not like the best safety out there, but he definitely helps bring a mentality. The things that Zach Vaughn has done, like, good Lord. So credit to the front office and to the defensive coordinator. They made the right hire. They brought in the right guys, and this defense is playing at a championship level.
We're speaking with Tim McManus. He does a tremendous job covering the Eagles for ESPN.com and 97.5 The Fanatic. Let me ask you about the offensive line. Lane left for a little bit after doing a tremendous job against T.J. Watt, came right back. But Dickerson, we don't quite know about Landon Dickerson. And Steen at first struggled a little bit. He settled into it. If Dickerson can't go, it'll be Steen on that left side. Am I correct?
Yes.
And then if that's the case, how do you think they will be able to play with Steen having maybe a full week of practice? Because it clearly he struggled when he first went in against the Steelers, but obviously he hadn't been getting a lot of the reps at left guard.
Yeah, well, one thing that I've definitely learned over my time is not to doubt Jeff Stoutland. Like, he's taken just about anybody and turned them into a really high-end player, and I think that Steen, for the most part, that when he's been in there, has been really solid. But there were positive signs, Ty, out there today. With Landon Dickerson, I don't think he's going to be listed as a practice participant because really all 5 starting linemen were kind of off to the side as practice started, and they were throwing medicine balls. But Dickerson was one of them. I mean, these were, 100-pound medicine balls. I don't know exactly how much, but he's sitting there tossing them over his head, and I don't think that he'd be doing that if the knee injury was really bad. That just wouldn't make any sense. So I think that was a positive first sign that we saw out of Dickerson. And similarly, we saw A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley also off to the side. Okay. But as we know, Sirianni's been giving these guys rest a lot of the times on Wednesdays, so I wouldn't read too much into that. But we'll have a close eye on the practice report when that comes out.
All right, you look at this upcoming game. Obviously, Washington, they kind of stayed with the Eagles for 3 quarters. And in the fourth quarter, I believe it was 20-8 in the fourth quarter, Eagles. You expect that same type of physical game from the Eagles? I mean, I thought the Commanders tried to come out and play a little smack you down with the Eagles in that Week 11 game, but the Eagles had no part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I expect a good game in this one. I think it's only like a 3-point line, which is interesting. I mean, I know it's a road game, but still kind of interesting. And Washington, as we know, is in a fight for a wild card spot and positioning. And, this is going to be the second time they faced each other. And, so this is going to be one where I expect the Commanders to put up a little bit of a fight. They now have Marshawn Lattimore in the defensive backfield, which is different, and we'll see if that boosts their defense at all. On the flip side, Zach Ertz dealing with concussion. Will he be able to get cleared in time to face his former team? But these divisional games don't always go exactly as scripted. I think that this is a pretty feisty Washington team, so I'm expecting a good game down there.
One last thing, Tim. One of the things that made that game closer on the scoreboard was the 7 points that were given by Jake Elliott. Are you encouraged enough from last week's performance where he even made one kick that didn't count, came back later in that same drive, made another kick? Did you see enough last week to think that maybe he's a bit out of the woods with those struggles? Because that was big, those 7 points against Washington last time.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I think the main thing you want to see is, can he kick from distance? And so the 50-plus yarders. And I was watching him closely in warm-ups before this game this past week. And at 50 yards, he was good. And around 52, he was hitting. And then once he got to, 54, that's when it got kind of like 50-50-ish. And so I'm not super convinced that he's, definitely solved everything when it comes to the long-distance kicks. But that's just something that I think we still need to see. But the fact that he was perfect for what he was asked to do in this past game, certainly something that he can build off of. And obviously, as the competition gets tighter and they get into big games and playoff games and, the margin for error becomes so much smaller, the spotlight will increase on Elliot. And so far in his career, in big moments, he's risen to the occasion, and he'll undoubtedly be called on to do that again. A little bit more uncertainty this time around.
Well, Tim, we really appreciate the time. As usual, all your great work over at ESPN.com and with us, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, appreciate you guys.
All right, that was Tim McManus with the Midweek Report on the Comcast Business Hotline. Does a tremendous job.
Hey, everybody, thanks for watching our YouTube. If you want to help us out, go ahead and like and subscribe for us. If you liked what you saw, go right over here to our playlists and pick out whatever you want to watch.